The golden light of the Vale Crest Estate Harvest Gala spilled across the terrace like honey, thick and deceptive. It was a kind of evening designed for photographs, for magazine spreads, for the quiet assertion of old money. The air smelled of expensive champagne, night-blooming jasmine, and the subtle, earthy undertone of the harvest that would define the estate's future. Eliza Rowan stood near the edge of the manicured lawn, the crush of white gravel beneath her heels grounding her in a reality that felt increasingly unstable. She wore a simple black dress, elegant, understated, a stark contrast to the explosion of silks, taffeta, and diamond around her. She wasn't supposed to be a guest. She wasn't supposed to be family. In the eyes of the investors circling the champagne tower, she was simply staff, the archivist, the girl who organized the dusty bottles in the cellar, the ghost in the machine. But for 3 years in the quiet shadows of the barrel room, she had been something else entirely. She had been Adrian Vala's secret. Adrian stood at the center of the crowd now, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his smile effortless. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom, the golden heir to a dynasty built on grapes and grit. And standing beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, was Celeste Mercer. Celeste, with her sharp beauty, ice blonde hair, and her father's venture capital, looked like she belonged there. She wore emerald green, a color that screamed money and power. She didn't look like a secret. She looked like a future. Eliza gripped her champagne flute until her knuckles turned white. The crystal felt fragile, ready to shatter under the pressure of her trembling fingers. She caught Adrian's eye for a fraction of a second, a fleeting moment of contact where she expected to see apology, or perhaps fear. She expected him to look away, to show a flicker of the guilt she knew he carried. Instead, she saw a hardening, a door closing, a decision made. Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian's voice rang out, smooth and confident, amplified by the discreet microphone clipped to his lapel. The crowd quieted. The string quartet faded into the background, leaving a silence that felt heavy with anticipation. Thank you for joining us for the most important harvest in Vale Crest history. He paused, smiling down at Celeste. The air in Eliza's lungs turned to lead. The noise of the party seemed to recede, leaving only the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears. As we move into this new era, Adrian continued, his voice dropping to a tone of intimate gravity, it is important to solidify not just our business partnerships, but our personal foundations. The land we stand on requires roots, and I am honored to announce that Celeste Mercer has agreed to become my wife. A cheer went up, polite and enthusiastic. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for the society pages. Celeste beamed, a diamond the size of a marble catching the light on her finger, blinding in its brilliance. Eliza didn't move. She couldn't breathe. The silence in her head was deafening, a sharp contrast to the applause. He hadn't just betrayed her. He had erased her. He had taken the whispered promises in the dark, the stolen moments in the cellar, the plans they had made for the estate, and he had thrown them into the fire for a stock price. Adrian looked up, scanning the crowd. He saw Eliza. He didn't flinch. He didn't look guilty. He gave a small, almost imperceptible note of dismissal. This is how it has to be. The gesture said, know your place. You are the help. She is the future. Eliza placed her champagne flute on a passing tray. She didn't make a scene. She didn't scream. She turned, her long, dark auburn hair brushing her bare shoulders, and walked away from the light of the terrace, toward the dark embrace of the vineyards. She had given him her loyalty. She had given him her heart. But what Adrian Vale didn't know, what none of them knew, was that she still held the deed to his entire world. The morning after the gala, the estate was quiet, hung over on celebration and expensive wine. The late autumn sun filtered through the turning leaves, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. Eliza was in the archives, the smell of old paper and oak surrounding her like a shawl. It was the only place she felt safe. The archive room was located beneath the main manor, a cavernous space of stone walls and climate-controlled air. This was where the history of Vale Crest lived and where Eliza had spent the last 5 years cataloging it. She knew every map, every ledger, every stain on the parchment. She knew the secrets the family wanted to keep buried. She opened the bottom drawer of a heavy oak filing cabinet and pulled out a leather-bound ledger. It was unassuming brown, cracked at the spine, but inside, in fading ink, was the history of the original land grant. The door to the archive opened. Eliza didn't look up. She knew the footsteps light, measured, expensive. Eliza, it was Adrian. She finally looked up. He looked tired, the polish of the previous night slightly worn away, shadows under his eyes. He closed the door behind him, leaning against it as if holding back a tide. "You shouldn't have left early," he said softly. "People noticed." "Did they?" Eliza asked, her voice steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Or did they just see the help leaving?" Adrian flinched. "Don't be like that. You know how this works. The investors, the family legacy. Celeste brings capital we desperately need. Her father's firm is the only thing keeping the bank from foreclosing on the expansion. I did this for us." "There's no us, Adrian," Eliza said, her voice cold. "You made that clear when you put a ring on her finger in front of 100 people." Adrian stepped forward, his expression pleading. "Eliza, please, we can still. I mean, this doesn't have to change things between us. You know how I feel, but I have a duty to the family name." "And what about duty to the truth?" Eliza asked. She tapped the ledger. "Your grandfather, Julian, bought the land for the flagship block in 1975, but he didn't buy it from a bank. He bought it from my grandmother, and he never paid the full price." Adrian scoffed, a nervous laugh escaping him. He ran a hand through his hair. That a family legend. Eliza, a story. It was resolved years ago. My father settled all the old debts." "No," Eliza said. She pulled a folded document from beneath the ledger, a photocopy of the original deed. "It was never resolved. My mother didn't want to fight. She loved this place. She raised me here. She died here, working herself to bone for a family that called her staff. But Julian, he didn't forget." She slid the paper across the desk toward him. "Before he died, Julian showed me the final clause. The debt was never settled. The land title for the old block, the source of the eclipse, vintage never transferred to the Vale family trust. It stayed in my grandmother's name. And when she died, it passed to my mother. And when she died..." Adrian's face went pale. The reality of the situation began to seep in, cracking his facade of entitlement. "It passed to me," she finished. "I own the old block, Adrian. I own the soil your most expensive wine grows in. Without that parcel, Vale Crest is just a pretty house with empty barrels." Adrian stepped forward, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You can't be serious. You can't hold the estate hostage over a broken heart. That's childish. That's petty." "I'm not holding anything hostage," Eliza said. Standing up, she felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. "I'm simply reminding you of the facts. You chose Celeste. You chose the image. You chose to humiliate me in front of the people I've worked for my entire life. You made your bed, Adrian. But you forgot that my family owns the timber it was built from." She walked past him, leaving the ledger open on the desk. "Enjoy your engagement," she whispered. "I hope it buys you everything you think you need." 3 days later, the panic began. It started small. A phone call from the bank regarding a line of credit. Then a question from the distributor about the upcoming Eclipse vintage release. The legal team for the Vale Trust had filed the annual harvest paperwork, and for the first time in history, it came back with a red flag. Title discrepancy, parcel 14A. Owner unknown. In the boardroom overlooking the vines, Celeste Mercer sat at the head of the tablia position. She had already begun to treat as her own. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled back tight, looking every inch the future matriarch. Adrian sat to her right, looking gray and distracted. "This is ridiculous," Celeste snapped, tapping her manicured nails on the mahogany. "How can a title be missing? We have a legal department for this. We pay them millions. The land was never deeded to the trust." The estate attorney, Noah Bennett, said quietly. Noah was a man of few words, but his eyes were sharp behind his glasses. He looked at Adrian. "Julian kept it off the books. It appears he was protecting someone." "Protecting who?" Celeste demanded. "Eliza Rowan," Noah said. The name landed like a grenade. Celeste rolled her eyes dramatically. The cellar girl? You're telling me the fate of a $500 million empire rests on a girl who organizes wine inventory? Actually, Noah said, opening his folder, it rests on the fact that without her signature, the trust cannot harvest the grapes on Parcel 14A. That block produces the Eclipse label. The Eclipse label accounts for 60% of your revenue. If she refuses access, or if she sells the land to a competitor, the estate collapses, Adrian whispered, finishing the thought. The blood drained from his face. Celeste stood up, her silk dress rustling. She's bluffing. She's bitter. She's doing this because you dumped her, Adrian. God, you can't even handle a breakup correctly? This is embarrassing. Adrian looked stricken, but he didn't defend himself. He was remembering the look in Eliza's eyes in the archive. It wasn't the look of a woman bluffing. It was the look of a woman who had already won. We need to settle this, Adrian said, his voice tight. He'll talk to her. He'll fix it. I can reason with her. No, Celeste said sharply. You've done enough talking. He'll handle it. He'll write her a check. Everyone has a price, especially people like her. Celeste found Eliza in the private cellar, checking the humidity gauges. The room was cold, the air thick with the scent of aging Cabernet. It was a cathedral of wood and wine, silent and holy. Celeste ascended the stairs, her heels clicking obnoxiously on the stone. She held a checkbook in her hand. Eliza, Celeste said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We need to talk. Eliza didn't turn around. She adjusted a gauge on barrel 42. I'm working, Celeste. I'm sure you can find the exit. It's the big door at the top of the stairs. I'm sure I can, Celeste said, stepping closer, but I'd rather you take this. She held out a slip of paper. $2 million. That's more money than you'll see in 3 lifetimes of cataloging dust. Sign the deed over to the trust, and you can walk away. Buy a little house. Start a little life. Somewhere far away from here. Eliza turned slowly. She looked at the check, then up at Celeste's face. $2 million? Eliza asked softly. It's generous. Celeste sneered. Take it before I decide to make your life a living hell. I can have you fired by the end of the day. I can blacklist you from every vineyard in the valley. Eliza reached out and took the check. She looked at the zeros. Then, with a deliberate, slow motion, she tore the paper in half. Then in half again. She let the pieces flutter to the stone floor like confetti. You're making a mistake, Celeste hissed, her composure cracking. You think you have power? You're nothing. You're the daughter of a maid. You're a footnote in our history. I am the owner of the land, Eliza said, her voice like ice. And you are a guest who has overstayed her welcome. Get out of my cellar. Or what? Celeste challenged, stepping forward, her face twisted in rage. Or I call the sheriff. Eliza said. She pulled her phone from her pocket. This is private property. And as of this morning, I filed a restraining order against anyone acting on behalf of the Veiled Trust who attempt to access my land without permission. Celeste stared at her, mouth slightly open. You wouldn't. Try me, Eliza said. The harvest is in 2 weeks. Without my signature, your trucks don't roll. Your pickers don't enter. Your grapes rot on the vine. And your father's investment? It goes to zero. Celeste turned and stormed up the stairs, but the panic was audible in her footsteps. The crisis hit the fan 2 days later. Noah Bennett arrived at Eliza's cottage on the edge of the property. It was a small stone house, covered in wisteria, the home she had shared with her mother. He carried a briefcase. You're playing a dangerous game. Eliza, Noah said, sitting on her porch with a cup of tea. He looked tired. The family is in chaos. The bank is threatening to call on the loans. I'm not playing, Eliza said. I'm correcting a record they tried to burn. Julian wanted you to have this, Noah said, pulling a sealed letter from his jacket. He gave it to me the week before he died. He said if the family ever treated you with disrespect, if they ever value money over loyalty, you were to use the leverage. He loved your mother, in his own way. Eliza took the letter. Her hands trembled slightly. She broke the wax seal. My dear Eliza, I have watched the Valles grow arrogant. I have watched them forget that an empire is built on the hands that tend the soil, not just a mouse that drank the wine. Your mother saved this vineyard during the blight of '98. She worked until her hands bled. I promised her that her daughter would never be a servant in the house she helped build. Use this. Make them remember. With love and regret. Julian. Eliza folded the letter, tears stinging her eyes. She hadn't wanted this fight. She had only wanted Adrian to love her for who she was, not where she came from. But dignity, she realized, was something you had to build for yourself. The board is meeting tomorrow, Noah said. They're going to try to contest the deed. They're claiming adverse possession, that since the family has farmed the land for 40 years, it's legally theirs. Can they win? Eliza asked. Not if we produce the original letters between Julian and your grandmother. Noah said, Do you have them? Eliza looked toward the small bookshelf by the window. I have everything, Noah. My mother kept every note. She kept the receipts. Noah smiled, a rare, genuine expression. Then we have them. The boardroom was full the next morning. The tension was so thick it felt like a physical weight. Adrian sat at the center, his father's portrait watching from the wall above him. Celeste sat beside him, fuming. The doors opened. Eliza walked in. She wasn't wearing her usual practical clothes. She wore a sharp navy blazer, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman, taking back her ground. She took the empty seat at the far end of the table. She placed a thick folder in front of her. Ms. Rowan, the opposing counsel, began. Standing up, we are prepared to offer a settlement. We acknowledge the historical irregularity, but the Vail Trust has invested millions in the maintenance of Parcel 14A. We are prepared to offer $5 million for the title. I don't want your money, Eliza said, cutting him off. Her voice was calm, but it carried to the corners of the room. I want recognition. Adrian leaned forward. Eliza, please. We can settle this privately. We don't need to destroy the company. Think of the workers. Think of the legacy. The company is already destroyed, Eliza said, looking him in the eye. You destroyed it when you decided I was disposable. She opened her folder. She pulled out the original land survey, the letters from her grandmother, and the final codicil from Julian's will that Noah had filed late the night before. Under the terms of Julian Vala's last testament, Eliza said, the trust can only assume ownership of the Rowan parcel if the family upholds the moral stewardship clause. This clause stipulates that the family must treat the descendants of the original land grant with the same respect afforded to blood relatives. She looked around the room. She looked at Celeste, who was staring at the papers with hatred. She looked at Adrian, who looked like a man watching his life raft sink. At the harvest gala, Eliza continued, Adrian Vail publicly humiliated me. He announced an engagement designed to consolidate wealth, while erasing my contribution and my history. Celeste Mercer subsequently attempted to bribe me and threatened my employment. This constitutes a breach of the moral stewardship clause. Noah stood up. The law is clear. The breach invalidates the trust's option to buy. The land remains the sole property of Eliza Rowan. Furthermore, because the flagship vintage cannot be produced without the specific terroir, the trust is currently in breach of its distribution contracts. The room erupted. Lawyers whispered furiously. Celeste stood up, knocking her chair over. This is absurd. You can't let a staff member hold the company hostage. She is not a staff member, Noah said firmly. She is the majority landholder. And as of this morning, she has filed an injunction to stop the harvest. Silence fell again. Adrian stood up slowly. He looked at Eliza. The arrogance was gone. In its place was a terrifying emptiness. What do you want? He asked quietly. Eliza stood up. She gathered her papers. I want my mother's name on the wall of the main house, she said. I want the cellar girl narrative erased from every press release. I want Celeste off this property within the hour. And the land? Adrian asked. I am keeping the land, Eliza said. I will lease the harvesting rights back to the trust for a fair market rate and a seat on the board. Adrian blinked. It was a lifeline, a painful, humiliating lifeline, but a lifeline nonetheless. And me? He asked. Eliza looked at him. The love she felt was still there, buried deep under layers of scar tissue. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. You made your choice, Adrian, she said. You chose the empire. You just forgot that I am the Empire." She turned to Noah, dropped the papers. It took a week for the dust to settle. Celeste Mercer was gone. Her father pulled his investment. But with Eliza's land as collateral, Noah managed to secure new financing from consortium that valued heritage over quick flips. The headlines in wine papers were brutal veil, Heir loses crown to cellar girl. Eliza walked the rows of the old block. The harvest was in full swing. The air smelled of crushed grapes and damp earth. The sun was setting, painting the vines in shades of purple and gold. She saw Adrian standing by the fence, watching the workers. He looked older, tired. He was no longer the golden boy. He was an employee, managing operations at the pleasure of the board and at the pleasure of Eliza. He saw her. He lifted a hand in a small wave. Eliza didn't wave back. She nodded once, a professional courtesy. She walked toward the main house. Above the grand entrance, a new bronze plaque had been installed that morning. It read Margaret Rowan Vineyards, founded on integrity, sustained by love. Eliza touched the cool stone of the archway. She wasn't the girl in the black dress standing on the lawn anymore. She wasn't the secret in the cellar. She was home,